Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, Speaker Pelosi sent a letter to her committee chairman asking all of them to chip away at the federal budgetary spending. In addition, the Majority Leader, Hoyer, recently wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal urging for shared sacrifices to address the budget crisis this country is facing. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, their rhetoric does not match up to reality. Budget Chairman John Spratt even said, quote, "If you can't budget, you can't govern." Let me repeat that. This is what the chairman of the Budget Committee said. If you can't budget, you can't govern. I could not agree more. It's becoming increasingly clear, Mr. Speaker, however, that House Democrats cannot budget. American families and small businesses are making tough choices in this economic climate, but Democrats continue to spend and to spend. The federal government is spending more per household than ever before and running up a $1.5 trillion deficit in 2010, the largest deficit since the end of World War II. Now, how much is $1 trillion? If you started at day one at 0 BC, 0 AD, and spent $1 million every day, you still would not have spent $1 trillion. Despite deficits and debts as far as the eye can see, Democrat leaders do not plan to even pass a budget resolution. But since 1974, when the modern budget process was created, the House has never, ever failed to pass a budget resolution. Speaker Pelosi and Leader Hoyer can send all the letters and publish all the op-eds they want, but it does not change the fact there is no significant or legitimate plan to rein in federal spending or reduce the deficit by them. The federal government now spends over $31,000 per household, the highest ever. Recent budget deficits have reached unprecedented levels, accounting for 11% of the GDP. By comparison, the historical budget deficits, a yearly debt deficit, is only 2.9% of the GDP in the past. Publicly held debt is expected to climb to $15 trillion by 2020. And when combined with rising interest rates in a post-recovery economic environment, the interest payments on government debt also will skyrocket. CBO projects that the government's annual spending on net interest will more than triple from 2010 and 2020, and from $207 billion to $723 billion, just the interest. These deficits are appalling and all more shocking since CBO based these calculations on the complete expiration of the Bush tax cut. The alternative minimum tax will never be passed, and the future appropriations would be indexed to inflation. This is something Congress never will do. Since Democrats have taken over Congress in January 2007, the national debt has increased 42.4%. While the Democrat leadership talks a good game about addressing spending, we have yet to see any real action by them. The first step is to pass a budget to provide us with a blueprint, a simple roadmap for deficit reduction. The Balanced Budget Act of 1985 set the target date for a budget for April 15th, the same day as tax day for most Americans. Unfortunately, April 15th deadline for enacting a budget resolution has long since passed, and we still have no sign of a budget resolution. The Senate has not passed a budget, and the House has not even begun the simple process. Without a budget, there are no controls in place to rein in spending. It's a sign that Congress lacks the leadership and the willingness to set a framework to limit spending or control entitlement growth. Not passing a budget resolution sends a message to the American taxpayers that Congress is really not serious about addressing the fiscal crisis here and is unable to meet the challenges of uncontrolled spending and runaway deficits. This entire situation obviously is getting out of control. When someone goes for debt counseling, the first step is to cut up the credit cards and live within your means. Congress needs to rein in federal spending and to start living within its means. The answers are not higher taxes on out-of-work Americans, such as a value-added tax. That's why I've joined with my colleagues to send a letter to the National Commission on Fiscal Responsibility and Reform to not increase taxes through a VAT tax as a means of balancing the budget. High taxes aren't the solution, less spending is. We must reduce spending of this federal government if we are to exercise fiscal responsibility. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the Democrat leadership continues to talk a good game, but has not yet shown a willingness to act in any significant measure to get our fiscal house in order.